Hello again, everyone. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. You are watching part 2 of my video about troubleshooting or doing a diagnostic on this Singer 503. I'm trying to break the videos up into sections so you guys don't have to listen to me drone on too long in one individual video. I'm trying to get better at that. So I've got going to try something here. You know, you guys saw that the needle had broken and, excuse me, the thread had broken. There can be many causes of that. Threads can break because the tension is too tight or it's too loose. Threads can break also because the needle size may not be in a good proportion or ratio to the thread thickness. So I wasn't sure. I don't know. This is the original needle, but I don't know the size. I can't tell by staring at them. And so I wanted to make sure I have what I think is a 14. I believe that's a 14. Put the flat side to the back. By the way, if you're never sure, it's not always easy to tell. If you can find a good source of natural light, you'll see the flat side will show up differently in the light. And if you're still not sure, opposite of the flat side down below here, you'll feel the groove, and that's how you know you're in the right. That's how you know you have it in the right position. So also insert your needle all the way up until it stops. So you know that it's in the right vertical position. Don't let go of it. Hold on to it as you turn and snug down your thumb screw to snug the needle in. If you don't, your needle could actually drop or move, and you don't want that because it can throw your timing off. Okay, now I'm going to and notice another thing to remember, guys. A lot of times when you're threading a needle, I think this happened in one of the other videos, your thread may come out of your thread guide, right? And that's okay, but you got to put it back before you start sewing. So let's drop this down just so we can see the eye of the needle, okay? Because we've already gotten our thread through our tension dial, so I'm not really worried about the thread. Not really worried that the thread is going to have its tension messed with because we're no longer pulling it through those tension dials. Now I've got to be able to see what I'm doing here. Try to find the eye of the needle. I did it before, but the daylight is shifting, and I'm nearsighted, so I have pretty good vision up close, but even then, they made needle threading devices for a reason. Sewing machines would eventually be introduced that had automatic needle threading or some sort of device that would help you with it. It's one of those things that even today in modern sewing machines, it's one of those things you still have to kind of have patience with sometimes. If you want to have less needle threading chores, get good quality thread, right? Because if you buy cheap thread, it's more likely to break and you're going to have to rethread your needle again. So I've got what I believe is a 14. Okay, now I got my thread to go through the eye there. I find it easier to see to do this in natural light when I'm dealing, well, I just took it out. When I'm dealing, trying to thread a needle at night, I really need a flashlight so I can see where the eye of the needle is. It's not always easy to see, and the metal, the metal has a certain reflection of light that it gives off. So let's just, again, be patient. Don't let it frustrate you. Doing this sewing is something that a lot of people enjoy. It's important to them. But if you have a hiccup, and I think I've shown you guys between these two videos, I've already shown you 2 hiccups that I made, and I'm used to dealing with quite a few machines, but even I can, have to go back behind myself, and that's okay. That's how we learn. So I really like that you guys see that when it happens in a video, because hopefully, it's my hope that seeing someone like myself who's been overhauling sewing machines for 9 years, that if you make a mistake, don't feel bad. I did it, and so it's over. It's no big deal. You're doing the best you can, and if you can't get it, you can always just stop and walk away from it and come back. And sometimes, I don't know, things improve when you have time away from it. So don't have my, let me try to cut the thread here. I don't have my flashlight. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. Certainly is helpful at night. Okay, just trying to be able to see the eye of the needle. That is half the battle with threading your sewing machine needle. You know, if I had a soundtrack to this thing, it would really put you to sleep. It's like watching paint dry. That's okay. We all need some kind of Zen experience, especially in the last year. Okay, it's wanting to go in there. Come on, come on. Okay, so I am going to work to get this threaded. Okay, guys, I got the thread into the eye of the needle, but before you go crazy and get ready to start sewing, remember a couple of things here. The first thing is that thread, when you are threading a needle, you have to make sure that your thread has not started to wiggle and encircle the needle shaft, because that can cause problems. The other issue here, let's bring this foot up, is with a sewing machine thread, when you're trying to thread the needle, a lot of times you saw me pull. I had to pull extra length of thread to kind of get myself a running start here. But notice I lost my thread guides. I may have done that the last time I did this. So come in here, make sure that you hit all your thread guides, because if you don't, you're going to have problems. You will have worked so hard to get that needle threaded, and lo and behold, you will have issues. I want to check and make sure that this thread has not, I need to make sure that it's not encircled, that it literally is not wrapping around the shaft of the needle, right? So let's make sure, because if it is, I'm going to have to fix that. If I don't, I'm going to have problems. Right now, it needs to come around this way. Okay, guys, I went and got a flashlight, and you may find this useful. So again, the thread goes in front to back, but again, I had my thread, while I was trying to thread it into the needle, there's a lot of twist in this thread, and it managed to wrangle itself like a little snake around the needle, right? And you want the thread to be lined up and go straight through the needle. It doesn't need to make any winding passes around the needle, because that will screw up your tension. So I'm going to now, holding the thread like this, you guys can see it there. Remember, we've come off our thread guides, and that was necessary because I needed to get more thread length. It'll come loose, but just make sure that you've got both thread guides back in action. Now let's come up, and we'll pull back. Yeah, okay. So we're going to try this again. And again, I don't think my tension is off, because the stitches are not really revealing that to me. The stitches are not showing me that my tension is off, but we want to make sure that, was it the thread path that did this? We'll see. Let's start again. And this time I'll flip the fabric. I can get more fabric if I want, but we'll know which is which, because now we'll have the green stitches on this side. And I just want to see if they will be consistent, or if they'll start hopping again like they did before. And let's come back. We'll just get things set up for a long straight stitch. Let's go back to where we were when we started. Alrighty, let's come back. Whoops, it would help if I put the foot down. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and pull my needle up just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and change my stitch width again, and let's see what the zigzag looks like. Okay, so this is the new test after I have installed a different needle. Let's see, where did we begin? I think I started right here. See my tail hanging out there. Now the thread stitch length seems to be more consistent here. It changed a little bit here, and that can happen sometimes with some machines when your density changes. Coming down, it's kind of hard to see that. We came around, made a turn. I came back over here, came this way, and then I started the zigzags. And so far, I'm not seeing the skipping. So it could have been that I had missed the thread guide. It could also be that the thread weight compared to the needle size ratio may have been off. And I know that's a 14 needle. I think I've got a 14 needle in there. And then let's look on this side. And of course, we see the same thing. So I don't think we have a tension issue. Hopefully we solved whatever this was causing. Sometimes something as simple as a needle, right? Just something just as simple as a needle, and how it's playing with your thread can throw things off. And Singer Slant-O-Matics, not sometimes the 301, but usually the 400, 500 series, they can be cranky at times, because it's not because they're not well made, but they're extra picky about all these thread paths. But it makes sense because this machine has a lot more complexity to it, and it can do a lot more than a straight stitcher, which, that's one of the trade-offs when you have something that is more complex. Now let's go back to the idea here we talked. I think I talked in the first one of the videos about the hand wheel, and of course talking about the bobbin winder, in fact that it moved up top. Okay guys, we are going to test the bobbin winder, see what's going on with it. There may be nothing going on with it, I don't know, but I was asked to check it out. So if you look in your manual, you will see there's a certain, we need more height here. There's a certain thread guide for bobbin winding. It's a little more involved than some machines, but not a problem. Just a few more places. I'm going to move our sewing thread down for just a moment, and I am looking. What am I looking for? Sometimes if you want to test a bobbin winder, I can just use another drop-in bobbin instead of a thread spool, which I could use another spool of thread. But there's nothing wrong with doing this because we're testing it. We're not actually winding to load the bobbin with thread. I just want to test it. So there's a guide over here. You want to come around it. Then you're going to hit right here, and then this is where our bobbin is going to be inserted. I've still got some thread on this bobbin here. These are just some spares that I have. So I'm going to go ahead, and again, you always take your thread from the inside and come out through one of these holes here. And don't be surprised if the thread falls out of your hand. That's just the way it goes sometimes. Again, have fun with this, guys, and take it. I know it's important to you when you're trying to get a sewing machine to run, but don't take it so seriously that it upsets you. Okay, it's just think of it like a puzzle. Okay, so now I've got my thread. Let's see if you guys can. If you can see, if I elevate this a little bit more, don't know how well you'll see this, but there's this dark colored thread comes around. Now I'm going to hold it here for just a minute. This is the dark thread here. Now I'm going to take this lever, push it in, and when I do, it's going to come up against the bobbin. Now, but we're not done yet, because don't forget, right? We've got to hold the hand wheel and I'll change my angle again here. Hold the hand wheel, pull this inner knob toward you so that the needle will not move. Don't forget to hold. You have a thread tail here on the bobbin until it starts to wind, right? So let's just go slowly, see what it wants to do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut that thread tail. I don't want it getting in trouble and getting wild and woolly there. Now let's try this. You don't want to go too fast. Remember, winding a bobbin, you don't want it too fast or you'll get too much tension on the thread. But it's working fine. It seems to be working just fine. Normally, if you keep going, when it gets to, before it fully loads, it should have a way of stopping itself, but it might not. So watch it. You don't want your thread to come past the edges of your bobbin. Anyway, I can tell that the bobbin winder seems to be working fine. It's not as simple as that on the 301 and the 400 series, but it works just fine. So that's good news there. Okay. So again, checking things out. But before we re-engage the drive shaft for the needle, this might not be a bad time to consider listening to this motor, because we can do it without the needle moving all over the place. And we're going to basically we're going to listen to the motor, and this is a very subjective test. Okay, if you have a slant-o-matic Singer, it could be a 301, any of the 400 series or the 500, or even later 600, maybe even the 700 series. If it has these beltless direct gear drive motors, you may have a similar question that my client has, which is it supposed to sound this way? I've mentioned before in some prior video that every motor design has a certain sound that distinguishes it from others, and that's just, it has to do with how they're engineered electrically. I can't really speak any more to it, but you will discover that every sewing machine motor design will have a slightly different sound, even when they're similar types. So if you have a Singer that has the old potted motor design, which looked like a little box that hung on the back of the machine, it doesn't sound like this. Even though this is also a direct drive motor, it's a completely different design of motor. And so it's not going to sound anything like the other potted motor, because this is really a totally different motor. Just because it doesn't use a belt like the potted motor doesn't mean it's the same design from an electrical engineering standpoint. I created a lot of slack here when I took the sewing thread off, so we want to get all that set back up. But I'm not going to sew with it yet. What I want to do now is listen. And we'll turn the mic toward the machine. Maybe that will help. And right now I've just got it set up to wind a bobbin. I've taken the bobbin out. I just want to hear the motor run without the needle engaging. Now guys, you would never wind a bobbin that fast, but I wanted to hear it run. All of the slant-o-matics, their motors are wonderful. They are much easier to get out of the machine than the old potted motors are. They're just, and I think Singer did that on purpose as a response to their own tech support. People who said, could you make this easier for us? Okay, so these motors are a joy to work on. They're very durable. All of them have to be inspected. So don't, just because it's durable doesn't mean you don't have to pay attention to it. You really want to know that it's in good solid condition. Historically, they've held up fairly well as a general rule. But they typically, when they are running properly, they have kind of a turbine whirring sound like you hear here. And again, describing sounds is very subjective. You may use something else to describe it. But this is not an unusual sound. Now, these motors have bearings, and the bearings, those bearings need to be rejuvenated, because the original grease might be the original grease from 1958, and it's old grease and it's tired grease. Okay, so those bearings need lubrication. Turning the mic back toward me. So I'm going to show you what that looks like, or I'm actually going to show you where you want to look for the motor bearing. So right now, what we're doing is we're basically troubleshooting the machine, listening to it. I've gotten it to sew. One of the things I noticed when I was running this without the needle engaging, but even when the needle is engaged and I'm not winding a bobbin, I'm feeling this sort of, there's like, it moves freely, but then there's something that kind of binds it. It's almost like it's it's getting faster in its rotation and then slowing down. I don't really know what's causing it right now. It could be that we have an issue with thread getting caught, although that's not as likely with this design change. So anyway, that is what excuse me, what we are going to try to figure out. So stay tuned. In the next video, I'll take you guys on the inside of the machine, and we're going to see if we can notice anything that's going on with it. Just by looking, we'll see what's happening. But again, at this point, I don't really know, other than the fact that we've got the stitch quality improved. Again, I have not gone through this machine entirely, so that's why it makes it tougher for me to really pinpoint without going through the whole thing. Because when you overhaul it or restore a sewing machine from this era, you're basically, as you go through the machine, you really kind of neutralize any of the problems it may have had. And eventually, if it still has a problem, hopefully that helps you find out. So, in the next video, we'll take a look. We'll have an aerial view of the motor, and I'll show you guys where that bearing is. And again, there are remedies to getting that bearing back in good shape. Thanks for watching, guys.